I suppose the philosophy for the way I work is that I want to approach stories thinking about the bigger picture and how they can be used to make things better and improve things. So my name's Suzy Wrack and I'm a sports writer for The Guardian with a focus on women's football. I'd always been interested in women's football from quite an early age. On the council estate I grew up in Hackney in East London, Arsenal women started training in the park. This is when I was like 3-4 years old, opposite my council estate. Me and my dad were the only two people that went across and watched, and we'd go and watch them train every weekend. So I had always had women's football around, which I think not many people did growing up, so I was quite lucky in that sense in that they were always there. I read the newspapers, I read the sports pages, I watched football, I watched men's football. It was never ever on my radar as something that I could be involved in and do. So I actually did architecture at university, got a job in an architecture firm and worked there for a year. And at the same time I was also from quite an early age writing for various football fanzines. I'm an Arsenal fan, so I was writing for the Gooner here and there. Got shifts at The Guardian doing layout and editing, and it all grew from there, really. And Anna Kessel, who's now head of women's sport at The Telegraph, was at The Guardian and was asked to recommend someone to write regularly on women's football for The Guardian. She said, "You've got Suzy sitting over there on the desk, you should get her in." And I didn't miss a beat. Like, I did it when I was, on holiday. I did it, when I was, over Christmas. There wasn't in at least the first year and a half, I didn't miss a single week. It really built up a profile quite quickly because there was an audience for women's football out there that wasn't being served by the mainstream press. Immediately, we were putting out women's football to an audience that, maybe hadn't seen it with the regularity that we were able to do. And that really enabled me to build up quite a lot of trust early on with players. I kind of hit up a relationship with the Afghanistan women's football team fairly early on into their sort of playing existence. Because they knew me, they sort of directed me to Khalida Popal, who was one of the founders of the team, and the former coach, Kelly Lindsay. They felt confident enough in me as a journalist to be able to tell me about the horrific abuse suffered by the players at the hands of the president of the federation, and so to expose abuses which aren't necessarily talked about or even considered abuses or even understood as abuses in a society, in a culture that doesn't have the structures to protect you, is extremely high risk. But they were really brave in deciding to go to the international media in the hope that would put pressure on things domestically enough to preserve their safety. And I was just very lucky that they trusted me with that story. I'm really proud of the fact that I was able to provide the platform that they maybe wouldn't have had otherwise. I mean, it could have been anyone, but I think I was able to handle it in a particularly sensitive way because I had that social background to everything I do and everything I think. That's why when they were working so hard, a little team of them around Khalida, to get women out of the country as the Taliban retook hold of it, I was straight in there, and they completely trusted me entirely with all of the ins and outs of the story. You can't be a journalist without building incredibly strong relationships with the people that you're kind of getting stories from and working with. When I first started out, there were very few of us around covering women's football. Sort of in the last 4 or 5 years, a whole host of people have sort of come into the fold, and it is really exciting and nice to be a part of that growth. We all know that us all being there is a part of the game growing, and that the game needs a lot of people covering it for it to develop and for that to increase our workload. I want to see the women's game covered in exactly the same way as the men's game, and better. I want to see sports pages of newspapers with equal billing for men's and women's sports generally, not just football. Websites where it's as many stories about women's sport as there are about men's sport. where there's, you know, full-time journalists working in across the media on women's sport generally, not just one or two people here and there. I'm interested in the power of football and what it can do, and how it can be used to change things. And if I can use journalism to promote the people and stories that are doing that and can actually effect change that is going to improve things for women playing football, or for anyone playing football, then that for me is the best part of the job. So they're the stories that really, I really care about.